Hello, and welcome to the virtual professional development session on creating online presence. Please be sure and print out the guided notes that go along with the presentation and fill those out as you go along. It'll help to keep you engaged and keep you following along with where we are in the presentation. Also check out some of the other additional resources that are down there. Lots of links to different tech tools and tutorial videos and things of that nature. Lastly, do be sure and complete the quiz and the reflection question down below so that you get your credit for participating virtually, and I hope you enjoy this session. In this session, we're going to be talking about creating an online presence in your online courses. If you have any experience with online education as a teacher or a student on either side of the coin, you've likely had some good, some bad, and some ugly experiences. Personally, I've been a student, an online student, since about 2010. So over the course of the last 8 or 9 years, I've been enrolled in somewhere between 70 and 80 credit hours worth of online courses. So I've seen my fair share of good, bad, and ugly courses. And most of the time, what determines whether the course is an enjoyable experience or not an enjoyable experience has a lot to do with whether or not the instructor is present in that online course. For example, the worst experience I've probably ever had was in my undergraduate studies. I had an online course that the instructor did not send us any form of communication until about 3 or 4 weeks into the semester. So we didn't know what we were supposed to be doing. We didn't have a syllabus. We didn't know if there was a textbook. She wasn't returning emails. And then even when she did finally communicate with us, it wasn't very helpful information, and that whole semester was just a struggle. And she just wasn't present. She didn't communicate. There was nothing in the LMS for us to be doing. It was bad. I've also had some very good experiences in my doctoral program. I've had one professor in particular who is very involved in the discussion forums. She has very good prompts. She has rubrics for us to go by, and again, very engaged in the discussions. She's in there posting every day, and you really feel like she is engaged in the conversation with the class, and you can tell that she's logging in on a very regular basis and responding to a lot of people, not everybody, but responding to a lot of people's posts for every week's discussion. And then I've had, some courses where the instructor has been present, but the course still isn't all that great. So it's not that this is some sort of magic pill that, if you're able to somehow master the art of online presence, then just voila, you're now the master online instructor, and all your courses are going to be great, grand, and wonderful, and your retention is going to be through the roof, and all your students are going to love you and send you presents. That's not what I'm trying to sell you here. You can be present in your courses and still have your students, your students still have a bad experience. But it is much less likely that they will if you are present in your online courses. And so we're going to talk about how we can do that. So our objectives for this session are to define what it is that we're talking about. We want to talk about why it's important. We're going to look at some strategies for how to be able to accomplish this, and then look at some instructional technology tools that we can use to help accomplish this. So as we go through the presentation, if you'll pay attention down here in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see these little icons, and that'll kind of give you an idea of where we are in the session, in the presentation. So each one of the icons is kind of correlated to one of our objectives. So as long as the little magnifying glass is up there, you know that we're still defining our defining online presence. When we move to the question mark, we're talking about why is it important, so on and so forth. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of, you know, how much we have left in the presentation. So we'll start with talking about what is it? What is online presence? So a good way for us to start to kind of make sense of what this is, a good framework or a good lens through which we can view online presence, is something called a community of inquiry. And a community of inquiry is made up of three main components that you see here. You've got cognitive, social, and teaching presence. And the teaching presence part of that kind of trumps the other two parts in terms of, you know, if we're prioritizing what's most and least important, then it would probably go from least to most: social presence, cognitive presence, and then teaching presence. And so we'll look at them in that order. But according to this framework, you really need to have the combination of all three of these in order to create the optimum educational experience for your students. So we'll start off by talking about social presence, which is kind of a prerequisite for the other two types of presence. You can't really successfully have cognitive and teaching presence if you have not first established a good social presence and a good community in the course. So even though it's not as important as the others per se in terms of learning, because without the cognitive and teaching presence, no learning is likely going to happen. But without this, it's hard to accomplish the other two. So you can see where you kind of need all three working together to get that educational experience. And the literature does show that there are some positive correlations between good social presence by the instructor and student satisfaction, as well as development of learning communities. So you'll notice both of those things have nothing to do with learning, right? So we have this correlation between social presence and satisfaction, which is great. We want our students to be happy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're learning anything. And then we have this correlation between social presence and the development of a learning community, which again is great. But just because we have a learning community does not necessarily mean that we're learning anything. So what does social presence mean in terms of what do faculty do and what do students do? So on the faculty side of things, we need to provide lots of opportunities for student-to-student and student-instructor interactions, and we need to provide clear expectations and guidelines that kind of frame those interactions, and we need to create value for those interactions. So we don't need to have discussion forums just for the sake of having discussion forums. And this is really, you know, discussion forums are kind of the go-to, so to speak, for creating this social presence. You know, it's the cliche post once, respond twice, and you just kind of have it there because you need to check a box for, you know, administration or some policy or whatever. And it is a great way to build social presence if you are actually engaged in your discussion forum. However, if you're not engaged, then it actually does more harm than good, because it causes the students to have more feelings of isolation if they're in a forum posting and you're not. So if you know that you're not going to be engaged in the discussion forum, then try to find some other avenues to build this social presence. So faculty and students both need to be willing to share, you know, their thoughts and opinions inside the frame of the guidelines that you've set forth. And, you know, those guidelines and a statement talking about, you know, good etiquette and how you want your students to interact within the online community, that's good stuff for you to put in your syllabus, you know, and have an instructor and a student expectations portion and lay it out for them there. You know, this is how I expect you to behave, so to speak, in the discussion forums, and then also, you know, reiterate that throughout the course as needed. So next we'll talk a little bit about cognitive presence, which is, okay, so going back to the idea of we need all three of these, right? So just because we are able to establish a social presence does not mean that learning is taking place, right? So we have to be cognitively present within our course as well. And I guess one of the easiest ways to kind of think about this is that we want quality over quantity, right? It's great if we have discussion forums for every module, and you know, even if you're in there posting every week in these forums, if all you're posting is good job or I agree, then that's not getting the juices flowing, so to speak, for your students, right? So we want quality interactions rather than just a whole lot of interactions. Okay, so our social presence is necessary, but it's insufficient in terms of producing the learning outcomes that we want to see. So we need this cognitive presence to get those learning outcomes that we want. So on the instructor side of things, we want to set clear and high expectations for our students, and we want to model the cognitive skills that we're trying to develop. So when I say clear expectations, read chapter 1 is something that I see a lot. Okay, so is it clear? Yeah, I know what you want me to do. You want me to read chapter 1. But what if I don't really know how to read chapter 1? And I don't know what you want me to get out of that, right? You know, to most of our students, if you say read chapter 1 and they're a, you know, decent average student that is engaged in the course and is willing to put the time and effort for it, they're going to start with the first word of the chapter, and then they're going to read all the words and then end with the last word. Okay, so they read chapter 1. Now, did they get out of it what you wanted them to get out of it? Who knows? They sure don't know, because you didn't tell them what you want them to get out of it, right? And maybe you don't know what you want them to get out of it. So this kind of goes both ways. It's, you know, when we start to think about this presence, it's good for our students, and it's also good for us, because it gets us questioning, you know, what do we really want our students to get out of these courses? What, if I'm telling them to read chapter 1, why am I telling them to do this? Is there, you know, what value is attached to reading chapter 1? And then, you know, model for them the cognitive skills that you want to see them develop. If you want to see them become better readers, then, you know, maybe for the first chapter, you make a little video and go through and show them exactly, you know, what to look for in the chapter. You know, highlight the headings and subheadings. Develop some questions for yourself before you start reading, so that when you start reading, you have some things that you're looking for, right? Instead of just mindlessly reading words, if you develop your own questions ahead of time, then it gives you a reason to read, right? And so the whole time you're reading, you're thinking, okay, well, I haven't answered this question yet, and so I'm looking for this answer. And then when you find it, you know, you're excited because you've set a goal and then achieved that goal. You know, and whatever other cognitive skills you want them to develop, you're gonna, you know, you need to model those. You can't just expect for these students to just develop these cognitive skills out of thin air. You know, so think out loud for them and break things down into steps and really model for them those cognitive skills that you want them to develop. And so we need to design learning activities that result in, you know, relevant and meaningful outcomes in terms of getting our students to put forth the time and effort that we want them to put forth to be able to get anything out of it, right? So here, what I like to think about is that my input is not necessarily going to be equal to, but congruent to, not a Q. My input is going to be congruent to my output. And for the most part, we can't really affect the input in terms of, you know, what kind of time and effort our students are putting into the assignment. However, if you're designing learning activities and you're designing assignments that have real world relevance and they have value within the course, right? So not some kind of throwaway assignment, then you know, you're going to have a much better chance of your students putting that time and effort into it, which is going to affect what they get out of it. Okay? But at the end of the day, you know, it's up to them to put the time and effort in. So, you know, on your end, you know, you need to be coming up with ways to create these authentic assessments. On their end, they have to put the time and effort in to be able to get the output that we're trying to get to. So that brings us to teaching presence, which, as I mentioned before, according to the authors of this this framework, this community of inquiry framework, teaching presence is the most important of the three. And this is the culmination of our course design and our course delivery. So you take everything that is involved in the design and the delivery of the course, and the sum of that is our teaching presence. And so one thing that I really wanted to point out is, you know, just thinking about the term teaching presence kind of, for me, when I first read that term, I'm thinking about actually, you know, recording lecture videos and, you know, providing feedback and all the things that we think that go along with teaching. But the teaching presence actually starts before the course ever starts, right? Because we're talking about course design as well. So teaching presence begins before the course commences, as the teacher, acting as the instructional designer, plans and prepares the course of study. And it continues during the course as the instructor facilitates the discourse and provides direct instruction when required. So again, we're talking about course design and course delivery. So I like to think of this kind of in a before, during, and after framework. The before would be the design portion, right? The during would be our delivery and facilitation of the course. And then when the course is over, we go back to, you know, revising, which is again, course design. So it's, this teaching presence is kind of an ongoing thing, which makes sense if we're saying that this is the most important component. It makes sense that it's this ongoing thing. It's not something that ever really stops, because we're always, you know, either revising or delivering our course. So teaching presence then is made up of three main components. You have course design, you have instruction, and you have facilitation. So when we're talking about course design, we're talking about things like curriculum development, and sequencing, which those kind of go hand in hand. You know, so what are we going to teach? What are our objectives? And what order are we going to put them in? Are we going to LO's learning objectives? Are we going to divide this into modules? Are we going to divide this into units? Are we going to do it by weeks? You know, what's going to go into each module? We need to think about what kind of resources, both instructional and assessments, are we going to use? And we need to make sure that we have alignment between all of that. So do the assessments that I have created actually measure the learning objectives that I set out to accomplish? And does the instruction that I have created help to prepare my students for the assessments. Okay, so it all needs to be aligned, and that is the the course design portion of this. Then you have your instruction. So how are you going to deliver your instruction? Are you going to record voiceover PowerPoints? Are you going to have someone and record live lectures in your traditional course and then post that after the fact? Are you going to use a combination of your own voiceovers with Khan Academy and YouTube videos? So how are you going to, first of all, disseminate information to your students? And how are you going to provide them with feedback? How will you respond to their inquiries in terms of discussion forums? And how will you summarize those discussion forums? And some people don't summarize the discussion forums. I've always found that I enjoyed it when an instructor took the time to kind of summarize the week's discussion, but it can be a time-consuming deal to read through all the discussion posts and try to come up with a succinct summation of all of that. And then your facilitation is what kind of course climate are you creating? Are you this is kind of the behind the scenes stuff, right? So facilitating the course is creating that social presence and creating that community where the students feel safe. It's also doing things like reporting to advisor track. When you have students that are not showing up, not logging in, not taking quizzes, things of that nature. It's keeping your grades up to date in the grade book so that students know where they stand at all points in time. It's all that behind the scenes kind of administrative type stuff that is part of it, unfortunately. It'd be nice if we all had secretaries to do all that kind of stuff for us, but unfortunately we are all our own secretaries. So that kind of gives us an idea about what we're talking about when we say online presence. We're talking about first creating that community where our students feel welcome and safe to discuss their ideas and voice their opinions, and you're frequently posting in the discussion boards if you have them. You're making announcements, you're sending out remind.com messages. It's all those things that combine to make the social presence. At the same time, we want our interactions and all of that to have some sort of significant value. We don't want to just be saying good job or I agree, things of that nature. We want to be engaging with our students' posts and our students' thoughts, and responding to them with thought-provoking questions and responses. And then we need to constantly be revising our courses and thinking about how can I update my instructional materials, how can I update my assessments, and do my instructional materials and my assessments meet the learning objectives that I've set out for this course. So now we'll talk a little bit about why online presence is important. And it, is somewhat obvious. You would just kind of assume that the more present you are in your online courses, the better it's going to go. And that's true to a certain extent. We've already talked a little bit about, it's not a magic pill that, just because you're present in your online course, that things are just going to be great, grand, and wonderful. But we'll talk a little bit about what the literature has to say, and then we'll look at what our own students have to say about our online courses. First and foremost, your online presence helps you to create a brand for yourself. And, you know, it's not like you're trying to sell anything, but you kind of are, right? I mean, you're trying to sell yourself to future students. And trust me when I say that students talk. And, you know, what do you want them to be saying about your online course when they're talking? I actually got my teeth cleaned sometime last year, and the dental hygienist that was cleaning my teeth was telling me that, you know, she went to Northwest Shoals and she was in such and such program and she had such and such instructor, and, you know, this instructor was really good and was engaging in the discussion boards, and this instructor was not so good and didn't have their content organized in the course and didn't respond to emails. And you know, I couldn't really respond and tell her, you know, hey, I work there, you know, you might want to hold off on name dropping, because my mouth was open and she had her hands in my mouth doing the dental hygienist thing. But, you know, and she mentioned that she told some of her friends specifically, don't take this course with this instructor online because I had a bad experience. So, you know, as distance education continues to grow, and it is growing, our distance enrollment has grown steadily over the past several years. You know, if you don't have a good brand, you know, if you have students out there telling other students, don't take this course online, you know, it possibly might affect your teaching load somewhere down the line. So just think about it in those terms. You know, students do talk, and what do you want them to say about you? What do you want them to say about your course? In terms of the research, the first swath of research that I came across when preparing for this session was a little bit disheartening to a certain extent, because you know, I was hoping to find online presence equals better learning outcomes so that I could come to you and make a sales pitch for being present online. But that's not what I found, at least not initially, because the vast majority of the research here has been done on graduate students and upper level undergraduate students. So what that kind of patch of literature was saying was that, you know, it results in the greater the online presence, the greater student satisfaction is, the greater student engagement is, but there wasn't anything to really tie learning outcomes to online presence. And then I found a report by the Community College Research Center, which is based out of Columbia University, and that was much different because their research focused on community college students, which are obviously going to be a lot less self-motivated and a lot less self-directed than a junior, senior, undergraduate, or a graduate student. And so what that report showed is that indeed, the greater the online presence, the greater the student engagement, the greater the satisfaction. There was correlations between presence, online presence and retention, and the one that I was hoping to find was that the greater the online presence of the instructor, the better the students did in the course. Okay, so we want all these other things as well. I'm not saying that it's not enough that online presence, you know, increases satisfaction and perception of learning and all those things. That's all good. But at the end of the day, what we want, you know, what motivates us to put time and effort is we want our students to do better, right? We want them to stay in our courses, not withdraw, make better grades, and learn more. And so it at least according to this specific report and some of the literature I was able to find on community college students, that is indeed the case. And at the same time, you know, we're increasing student engagement, we're decreasing the feelings of isolation that students have, which is the number one cause for withdrawal, right? So students get into these online courses, they feel like they're not supported. They send emails and messages and they don't get responses, or they make discussion posts and they don't get responses to that. They feel like the instructor is not there to help them, or not there at all, and they withdraw from the course. Now they might come back and take it traditional, but we don't know. We don't want to lose them in the first place. So we want to do everything that we can do to not make them feel isolated, to make them feel a part of a learning community. So what do our students say? And so we're going to go through some slides here, and fairly quickly. We won't spend too terribly long on each one of them. But, it's one thing to kind of talk about what the research says and what some people at Columbia University say, but it kind of hits a little more close to home when you read quotes from our own students. And so the quotes that I'm about to show you came from the surveys that we did when developing the latest QEP. And so students were asked about their online experiences, and the good and the bad, and what did you like and what did you not like. And so let's take a look at some of their responses. So, my instructor this semester is the best I've ever had for an online class. She sends out weekly reminders on what is due and always wants to know if we have any questions she can clear up for us. Very helpful. Okay, so weekly reminders, a good deal there. And obviously she's doing a good job communicating, because this student says, she always wants to know if we have any questions. Obviously she's communicating that in some way, because this is an online course. Okay, again, we see someone talking about weekly reminders, and this, I guess I should have prefaced this with the first kind of batch of quotes that we're looking at are all responses to what were your what did you enjoy about your course. So all of these quotes are in the this is what I enjoyed about my online course category, right? So weekly reminders. Again, reminders here. My instructor makes sure to remind us when skill set assignments are due and reminds us of test deadlines. Teacher posted study guides and sent out reminders, gave great feedback. The teacher for Psychology 200 has made sure to stay in touch and reminds us to make sure that our assignments are done each week. Weekly reminders. Okay, so all of those had something to do with frequent communication and reminding students when things are done, just staying in touch, having that social presence, right? And I could have, there was probably a dozen more that mentioned things about weekly reminders and feedback, weekly reminders and feedback. So just my instructor cares enough to stay in touch with me. Okay, and so the next couple are in the, this is what I did not enjoy about my online experience. Okay, so this student said, I feel like I'm completely isolated in my class. There is some interaction with other students, but not much. I've attempted to contact my instructor on one occasion, only to receive a vague answer. Okay, so here we see that feeling of isolation, and that led to obviously a negative experience in this course. Some classes that haven't posted grades yet, right? So that goes back to that facilitation aspect of the teaching presence, right? We have to be doing that behind the scenes stuff, that administrative stuff as well, so that our students know that there's somebody on the other side of that computer screen, that it's not just, they're not just engaging with a cold screen, that there is a live, warm human body on the other side. And discussions and all those are the things that we talk about the most, but things like this also let our students know that there's somebody there, right? Posting grades and doing those behind the scenes type activities are also a way that we can be present in our online courses. And so there are some classes that haven't posted grades on things I did at the beginning of the semester. Also a lack of communication, such as the wrong day when a test is due, so on and so forth, right? So not posting grades and not communicating well. My teacher only messaged me one time. I never received reminders. I wish I had more communication. And so all of our positive comments, and when I say all, literally all of the positive comments, there was something in the comment that alluded to good communication, having some form of social presence, cognitive presence, or teaching presence. And all of the negative comments were the lack of those three things. It was really, kind of amazing when I went through looking at these comments after looking at this community of inquiry framework. I could just see those three things all over the place. And, they were all in the positive comments, and they were lacking in the negative comments. So this is why we do it. This is why we do all this hard work and put all the time and effort that being present in our online courses requires, because it results in positive learning experiences for our students when we do, or it results in negative learning experiences for our students when we do not. Okay, so we've kind of talked a little bit about some different things that we can do, just, kind of in passing as we've went through the first couple of sections here, talking about what online presence is and why it's important. But now let's be a little more specific about some of the strategies that we can use to be present in our online courses. So first we'll talk about course design. So when I say one-on-one interaction, that can be in a variety of contexts, but you need to attempt to have a one-on-one interaction with each of your students every semester. And I know you're wanting to punch me through the computer screen right now thinking that is ridiculous and impossible and logistically a nightmare. And I respectfully disagree. You have the ability to hold virtual office hours, which I know many of you that are online instructors do that. And I completely agree with the idea of virtual office hours. I know the immense amount of work and time and effort that you're putting into your online courses when you're not here. And I think that you should be able to spend some time at your house and be, still connected, but not necessarily having to be here in your office. So I completely agree with the concept of having virtual office hours, and I think it's necessary for an online course. So think about the number of times that you have students actually take advantage of that. Let's say if you even do 2 hours a week with your virtual office hours, probably very, very few students are taking advantage of it. So what if you built into your course a requirement that every student must meet with you at least one time during the semester for 5 to 10 minutes during your virtual office hours, and you have some sort of predetermined agenda for those meetings. Because if you just say you've got to meet with me once during my virtual office hours and don't have any kind of value attached to that, then it's going to be a pointless meeting, right, for you and for them. So tie it to providing feedback, or tie it to preparing them for an essay, or have some reason, have some sort of value that's attached to them taking 5 or 10 minutes to meet with you during your virtual office hours. And it might lead to them taking more advantage of your virtual office hours and asking the questions that need to be asked, that for whatever reason they felt like they didn't have the time to, or maybe they didn't feel comfortable actually coming into your virtual office hours. Maybe they were afraid of, using the technology or bothering you, or whatever the case may be. If you kind of break the ice for them and say, hey, look, these are when my virtual office hours are, and every one of you needs to set an appointment with me at least once during the semester, then that might give them the little bit of encouragement that they need to actually take advantage of those virtual office hours. And if you do it that way, then I think you might be surprised at the amount of time that it doesn't take. We've already talked about, creating value. Everything that you do in the course needs to have value attached to it in terms of real-world value. And now I know not everything that you do can have some sort of real-world value, but definitely everything that you do needs to have value within the course, right? We don't want to have throwaway assignments. We don't want to have busy work. We want to, everything that we do needs to be for a reason, attached to a learning objective, helping us meet the goals that we've set out for the course. Solicit feedback from your students, right? So feedback is really a two-way street in terms of education. We provide it to them, and we need them to provide us with feedback as well. It's the best information that you're going to get to make your course better, right? These are your customers, so these are your customer satisfaction surveys, right? And I know that we give these at the end of every semester, and the response rate for those is usually very, very low. So if you in the middle of the semester posted some sort of poll on Moodle and just asked maybe 3 or 4 questions. How are things going? What's the best thing so far about the course? What's the worst thing so far about the course? What suggestions do you have? And do that same thing at the end of the course. You're going to get a lot of good data to make revisions moving forward. Now you're going to get some stuff that's just petty and whatever, but that's part of it. But I promise you're going to get some good feedback, and your students are going to feel more valued in the course, like their opinion matters. Be extra vigilant early on in the course. Even kind of go as far as planning out your your interaction plan, so to speak, for the first couple of weeks of the course. Log on more so than you normally would. Maybe send out, after the first week or so, maybe send out an email or a video saying, we're getting off to a great start. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. If you haven't done X, Y, and Z yet, you need to make sure you get that done. Just be extra vigilant early on, and then not necessarily that you don't need to be vigilant throughout the course, but the first couple of weeks of the course kind of sets the tone and lets them know up front, this instructor is going to be here for me. They're going to be present in this course, and I have support from my instructor in this course. I feel supported. Include social media. I know some of you are rolling your eyes right now, and that's fine. We're going to talk about kind of how to do that. I'm not big on social media either, but I have seen Twitter specifically be used, I feel like, in a positive way, and I'll show you what I mean by that here in just a few minutes. Group work, I know, a lot of times can be a nightmare, but if your content lends itself well to group work, and you feel comfortable enough, troubleshooting some of the technology that's probably going to be needed for group work, and you feel comfortable with, maybe having to engage in some conflict resolution. Again, I know that it can be a tremendous headache, but, the learning that happens in partner and group work is usually much deeper than learning that occurs independently. And these are skills that we need to be teaching our students, how to work in a group, and how to figure things out when things are not going well, and if John's not doing their part, then what's Jane going to do to remedy that situation? That's part of that's part of life. That's part of when you get into the workforce, things that you're going to encounter. So we need to be teaching them how to be good team members. All right, in terms of our discussion forums, we've talked a lot about discussion forums already, but you're the person that is going to set the tone for these discussion forums. If you're not engaging in your own discussion forums, I guarantee you your students will not either. For a couple of reasons. Number one, there's no value, there's no reason for them to do that. And number two, they don't know how. And, maybe you don't know how either. And I didn't know how for a very long time, because I would always be in these courses that had discussion forums, but the instructor wasn't involved. And it wasn't until, really just a few years ago that I had a few semesters in a row where I had instructors that had really good prompts, really good rubrics, and they were super engaged in the discussion forums, that I started to learn kind of what kind of value a discussion forum could add to a course. But it's up to you to set the tone for these forums. You need to be, engaging frequently and engaging meaningfully. One thing that I had an instructor do is post or include posts from previous semesters from other students, and kind of go through and highlight, these are the things that I'm looking for in the rubric. This is a good post. This is a not so good post. Of course, they didn't attach the student's name to them, and I'm sure they got the student's permission, beforehand to share that with us. But it really helped us, or me anyway, to be able to look and say, okay, this is what she's looking for. This is not what she's looking for. So, consider that. Rubrics and clear instructions, both of these are kind of similar. The instructions is more of what you want, whereas the rubric is going to be kind of how you're going to grade. It's really kind of impossible to have a meaningful discussion forum without those two things. You need to have good prompts, you need to have clear instructions, and they need to know exactly what it is that you're looking for. Just a couple of possible ideas for responses. A good way to keep the conversation going is to pose a question. And anytime that you come across a post and maybe you think, hey, I read an article or I saw a video on YouTube, go find that article or that YouTube video and post a link to that in your response to it and share it with your students. In terms of videos, it's always a good idea to post an introduction video, and actually as part of the QEP, we're all going to be required to post introduction videos. Just a short 2 to 3 minutes. Hey, my name is Matthew McCarg. I'll be your instructor this semester. I've been teaching this course for 5 years. I went to Athens State for my bachelor's. Just that type stuff. Share a little bit about your life. Let them know who you are. Let them see your face, and just introduce yourself. Give them a quick course tour is a good way to help them feel comfortable inside Moodle. Where do they go to find assignments? Where do they go to turn in assignments? Where are the resources in terms of your syllabus and your schedule and those type things? Show them where all that stuff is and kind of get them feeling comfortable navigating the course. Obviously, we can use video to disseminate information, do voiceover lectures, voiceover PowerPoints. You want to, as much as possible, keep those videos short. Research shows that attention drops dramatically after 6 minutes. Now, I know it's usually an impossibility to have any sort of meaningful instruction that is 6 minutes or less. But you know, if you've got an hour-long lecture, then cut it up into 5-10 minute videos instead of one long video. Your students are much more likely to engage with, you know, maybe a 10-minute video on Monday, a 10-minute video on Tuesday, a 10-minute video on Wednesday, rather than just having one 50-minute video and them looking at that and say, I don't have an hour right now, so I'm just not going to do it. So keep that in mind in terms of your lecture videos. You know, try to keep them shorter, and if you can't keep them short, then try to break them up into smaller chunks. And if you need help trying to figure out how to take a long video and break it into shorter videos, then come see me, and I'll be glad to help you figure out how to do that. Module overviews, this can be at the beginning and or the end of the module. You know, if you do it at the beginning, you know, take them through. These are the technology tools we're going to use in this module, and this is how you use them. These are the assignments that you have due in this module. I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and don't forget about this. You know, just a couple of minutes, doesn't have to be very long. And then at the end of the module, you know, again, just a couple of minutes, you know, some of the high points that we learned about, maybe what's coming in the next module. Maybe there were some common misconceptions that you found in grading their test that you kind of want to point out to them before moving forward, things of that nature. Weekly updates, again, this doesn't have to be long, you know, even 30, 60 seconds. Just, you know, if something changes, you know, if you need to change a due date, send it out in your remind.com, but then also send them out, you know, just a little 30-second video in case they don't get it. You know, once you get used to using Panopto or Screencast-O-Matic or whatever you end up choosing to use to make your videos, doing these short little, you know, module overview videos and weekly update videos, it's really, really quick. You know, they don't need to be scripted, they don't need to be rehearsed, and, you know, it's a good way for you to maintain your presence in your online course and build that community between you and your students and let them know that you're there and you're supporting them. We can also use video to provide feedback, and again, doesn't need to be scripted, doesn't need to be rehearsed, doesn't have to be long. You know, if they turn in an essay and you want to talk specifically about, you know, a certain paragraph, you can pull that document up and do a screen capture, you know, have it opened up in Word, highlight the text that you want to talk about, and, you know, say what you need to say, and then just email them a link to that video. And, you know, maybe it's not long and drawn out, but, you know, you're communicating with them, and in particular there, that's one-on-one feedback. And again, lets them know that you're there, you're supporting them, and that you know, you're willing to help them and be successful. More on feedback. You know, we just talked about doing audio and video feedback. It needs to be frequent. You know, it's hard to learn if you don't know what you're doing is wrong or right, or why it's wrong or why it's right. So you need to provide them with feedback, you know, at least once a week, once every other week. They need to be getting some sort of feedback, not necessarily a video from you, but, you know, a quiz that gives them some sort of automated feedback. You know, assignments in my math lab or MindTap or whatever. They need to have something that they're doing on a weekly basis that they're getting feedback from that lets them know I'm on track or I'm not on track. All of the feedback doesn't have to be, again, you know, one-on-one and personalized, but a good bit of it does need to be more than just this was right or wrong and, you know, good job. You need to, several times throughout the semester, have you know, personalized, specific feedback for every one of your students. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the one-on-one. you can use those virtual office hours to accomplish this. If not, then recording those short little 30, 60 seconds or maybe 1-2 minutes, however long it takes. If you have a assignment that a student turned in and you record a video of yourself talking about this assignment and providing them with feedback, that's one-on-one, right? That's not you saying, as a class, I don't feel like we really got this. 30 out of the 30 of you, 23 of you missed number 16. That's whole group feedback. Whereas if you record a video and send it to the student, then that's much more personalized. So with your virtual office hours, you can also, one of the options that you have to do with your virtual office hours, and we're going to talk about a couple of options that you have with that here in just a second. But you do have the option to do a weekly, not necessarily weekly, but you have a virtual chat option in Moodle. I'll spit it out eventually. So this is just a screenshot of, when you go to add an activity or a resource in Moodle, this is the virtual chat icon that you can select. And the way that works is it just creates a link in your Moodle course, and whatever time you want to specify for your students, you log in, and if you say Friday from 8 to 9 is my virtual office hours, then Friday at 8 o'clock you log onto your Moodle course, you click that link, and keep that page open on your computer from 8 to 9 o'clock, and students can come in during that time and live chat with you in there. And we'll look at a couple of other options for virtual office hours here in just a couple minutes. So now we're moving into the tools. So we've talked about what online presence is. We've talked about why it's important. We've talked about some different strategies. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We've talked about some different strategies to accomplish it. And so now let's talk about some of the tools that we have at our disposal to implement those strategies. Okay, so we'll go through and talk about each one of these kind of briefly, and then I will look at each one of them with you a little more in depth. So VoiceThread is unfortunately the only thing that you see here that does not have a free version or is not supplied for you by the institution. I believe it's $99 a year, which is fairly expensive, but I'll show you a short little tutorial video on VoiceThread, and you can make the decision for yourself if you want to use that. It is a very, very powerful tool. I've had several professors use it at Alabama, and I really like it. So Twitter obviously is the social media tool that I mentioned to you earlier that we would talk about. WebEx Teams, that's something that's provided to you through the institution. You can do, you've got SMS text, you've got video chats, you've got file sharing, you've got a whiteboard that you can use there. We'll talk about that briefly as well. And then the rest of them, Flipgrid, Screencast-O-Matic, Padlet, and WordPress, all of those are embedded into the online educator development course, and we'll look at them one at a time there. Screencast-O-Matic is a screen capture software similar to Panopto. WordPress is a blog website. Padlet is kind of an online collaboratory bulletin board. And then Flipgrid is a place that you can kind of house a repository of short little videos. So we'll look at each one of these kind of briefly here. First, let's watch this short little tutorial video of VoiceThread, and then I'll take you inside VoiceThread and let you kind of see how it operates inside of a course.
To create a VoiceThread, you just go to the top of the page and click on Create. And building your VoiceThread starts with adding your media, which you do by clicking Add Media, or just drag some files from your computer and drop them onto your web browser. The files are going to process, and when they're done, you'll see their thumbnails appear, and you can then edit them or delete them, and you can even reorder them just by clicking and dragging them around. Once you've added all your slides, you then click on the comment button to open up the VoiceThread and begin recording your comments. I won't go into all the options, but I'll make one sample comment to show you the basics. First, select a method to comment. I'll use my computer's built-in microphone. And then if you get a security prompt, just click Allow. And then start talking. And remember to click and draw on the screen to highlight what you're talking about. And you can even click over here down in the corner to go to other slides during your comment, moving from images to documents and other images, and you can even comment on videos, where you can play and pause the video to talk about different parts of it. And then whenever you're done, you just click Stop, and we'll replay your comment for you. Take a listen to it, and if you like it, save it. When you're done commenting, close the VoiceThread, and now you're ready to share it. So just come up here and click on the Share button, and share it however you like. After you do that, and you return to your VT homepage, you'll see your VoiceThread is there, and if someone makes a comment on it, you'll get an email about it, or you'll see a new comment notification on the VoiceThread itself. And remember, a VoiceThread is a living discussion space. You can always edit it again and again, adding and removing slides whenever you want.
So this is my student login for VoiceThread through Alabama, and this is one of my instructors from last semester. So this is one of her weekly update videos. Okay, so you see the name of the VoiceThread up here. So what she's done is just added the course schedule document here, and one page at a time she's going through and talking about, you know, what we're doing this week, what changes have been made, so on and so forth. So as we go through here, you'll see she's going through the schedule, talking about different things. And then on this last one here, I'm sorry, this is not the last one, but on this one, some people had some questions about, you know, some things, and so they commented on this particular part of the course schedule, and then Dr. Benson responded to those comments. So they were able to, you know, get some things figured out there. You can also respond with, you know, instead of responding with text, you can respond with video, you can upload your own documents, things of that nature. So again, it is a very powerful tool. There is not a free version of it, and I've never used it as an instructor. I've only used it as a student and seen how my instructors use it. So I'm not as familiar with VoiceThread as some of the other tools, but if you do decide that you want to try to use it and you end up with a paid version of it, then I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and try to figure out how we could implement it into your course. Let's take a look at Twitter and talk about how we could use that. I know, you know, maybe a lot of you don't even have Twitter accounts, so you might not really know what Twitter looks like. It's very similar to, you know, any other type of social media where you have a feed of things coming through here. You know, pick certain people to follow, and you know, if you're going to use this in your course, then you would want to give your students your username and have them follow you. The way that I've had professors use this in the past is for asynchronous discussions. So it's kind of the same concept as a discussion forum. So the only thing that you would need to do to accomplish that, so that everybody's posting in the same place, is to give a certain hashtag for the discussion forum, right? So in your Moodle course, you give them a discussion prompt and then tell them to go to Twitter and respond to that discussion prompt with a certain hashtag. So everybody that puts that hashtag, that same hashtag on their discussion post is going to be sent to the same spot. So it'd be easier for me to just show you. So one of the discussions that we had in one of our courses, we were to put the hashtag AIL601, so that was the course, and then DOI. Right, so I do a search for that hashtag, and now here is the discussion that we had. Right, so each one of these, you know, has possibly a response to it. Right, so if I click on this one, then you can see that Dr. Benson has responded there. You can, you know, like people's responses and all of that good stuff. You know, another good thing about Twitter is, you know, when you're posting, you can include videos, you can include links, you can, you know, do all of these things that you can't necessarily do as easily inside of Moodle or any other learning management system. So it kind of, you know, serves the same purpose as a discussion forum, but, you know, obviously your students are going to be, you know, more excited, at least in the beginning, you know, until the novelty of it possibly wears off. I'm sure that they would enjoy it. I'm sure that, you know, most of our students now probably do have Twitter. If not, then, you know, you'd have to get them to set up accounts as well. There's also a nice tool that's attached to Twitter called TweetDeck. So you can see across the top here, I've got different hashtags for this course. So each one of these is a different discussion for that course. And so I can have all the discussions right here on one page. And I can, you know, click on this and see what the replies are to any one of the comments. So this one here you see has 2 comments on it. So I click on it and I see the 2 comments there. So, you know, it's serving the same purpose, but it has the possibility of engaging your students a bit more, and it gives them more possibilities in terms of what they can use to respond with, or what they can use to post with. And you know, they can include memes and GIFs and videos and all that kind of stuff. One cool thing that I saw, a high school history teacher on here one time had her students take the perspective of different historical figures and get on here and tweet back and forth. So you had, you know, one person was designated as like George Washington, and one person was designated as King George, and, you know, so they're going back and forth having this discussion as if they were, you know, fighting in the Revolutionary War times. And you can do some cool things with it. So there's also lots of resources on, you know, how to use Twitter in the classroom and things of that nature. So and I'll put some of those resources down below this video for you to look at as well. Let's look at WebEx Teams. This is a technology that is provided to you through the institution. So this is WebEx. All you have to do to access WebEx is to go and download the software and then enter in your Northwest Shoals email, create a password, and you're good to go. I've got a couple of tutorial videos on getting up and running with WebEx Teams, so I'll provide those in the additional resources below this video as well. So what can we do with WebEx Teams? Just very quickly, you have spaces in Teams, right? So I could, all of these that you see here are spaces that I have, right? So here's a space between just me and Lauren, just me and Rob, just me and Tom. I'm sorry, not Tom, Todd. And so you can have within each one of these spaces, you see here we can have just a normal text conversation where we're chatting back and forth. And then you also have the option to do video calls, right? So this is the same thing as like Skype. You have a file sharing option. So this is a cloud-based file storing system. You have a whiteboard option here where I can create a new whiteboard and draw here. You've got some colors, and so I could do something on the whiteboard, and then Rob or whoever is in the space with me can look at that and add to it. You also can create teams. So within a team, you can have multiple spaces. The way that I would see this being able to benefit you in the classroom is to create a team for a course, right? So instead of sample team 1 here, I could say, I don't know, Math 100, right? So I've got this team for Math 100, and then within that, I have different spaces for different things, right? So I can set up an advising session maybe with a certain student, and that's a space that's just me and that student that's inside of the Math 100 team. Maybe I create a couple of spaces just for, specific discussions. Okay, so this is another kind of option to replace the traditional discussion forum. You can use it for your virtual office hours. Something that we get along with WebEx Teams is access to the WebEx Meetings software. So WebEx Meetings is the same as like GoToMeeting or Zoom or Skype, all of those type softwares. So this is how you would use the WebEx Meetings part of things. First, you're going to have to find your personal meeting space URL. So you'll click on the Meetings tab over here and then go to My Personal Room. All right, and then here is your WebEx Meetings Personal Room URL. And you don't have to do anything to set that up. When you download WebEx Teams and create your account, then all of this is created for you. Okay, so once you download the software, open it up, go to, click on the Meetings tab, click on My Personal Room, and you'll automatically have this website set up for you. So then we can take this link here, copy this link, go into our Moodle course, and you can see here that I've created a demo link for this PD session. And so what I did is just linked in I created a hyperlink right here using the URL for my personal meeting space. So I click on this, and I'm sorry, let me back up. You put this in your Moodle course, and then your students would come in and click on this link, and it would take them directly into your personal meeting space, right? So you would be the first one to go in, but then all they would have to do would be to just click on this link. It'll take them to this spot here. They would put in their name and their email address, and join the meeting, right? So if the instructor had already logged in, then instead of this saying we'll start the meeting when the host joins, then it would just take me straight into the meeting, and I could either have a video chat depending on whether or not the student has a webcam, or you could chat back and forth like just a live chat session. So that is one option that you have for your virtual office hours. We talked about the virtual chat in Moodle. So I added a sample virtual chat here for you to look at. And it's just exactly what it sounds like. You click on it and then click on enter. And then, your students would click on that same link. And it's just a virtual chat. So that's another option that you could use for your virtual office hours. In terms of WebEx Teams, the reason that we haven't pushed WebEx Teams more than we have up to this point is because for you to be able to use it, efficiently, requires that our students are in the WebEx Teams database, and we want them to be in that database with their Northwest Shoals email. And so what our plan moving forward is to, with our new distance orientation, is to require them to set up their Northwest Shoals email, get them to log into WebEx Teams with their Northwest Shoals email, and then we're going to have our advising staff, our distance student success coach, and our other success coaches hopefully using WebEx to get them used to the software, get them used to using it, so that by the time they get to you, they've already got it downloaded, they already know how to use it, and they're already in the database, so that when you go to set up a space or a team, all you have to do is click on Add New Member and then start typing in the student's name, and it'll just pop up automatically. So let's look at some of the tools that we use here. So first of all, you see a weekly update video here. And what I've used to make this weekly update video is a tool called Screencast-O-Matic. It is a free tool. It's very similar to Panopto. I have the paid version of it, which is $18 a year. And, $18 a year is not very expensive. And it's just a little bit more user-friendly and easier to do those really quick, 1 or 2 minute videos and get them pushed out quicker than you kind of can with Panopto. So you see here I've embedded it straight on the page. It's right up here at the top of the page. So every week I will just do another video. I'll change the date and update the video here. And they're usually somewhere around 2 minutes long, and it takes me about 5 to 6 minutes to do the whole process. And so you can play it right here on the Moodle page, maximize it, and you see here with Screencast-O-Matic, you've got the little picture-in-picture option. So you've got the screen capture with the webcam capture simultaneously, or you can do it to where you just have the screen capture without the webcam. WordPress, we talked about being a blog, which is again another kind of alternative to your traditional discussion. So this is what the blog looks like for this course. So as you scroll through here, you see each person posts with their last name and then the title of the blog, and you get a little snapshot of what the post has in it. And then if you say, you read this and you're like, hey, that one seems interesting, then you can continue reading the rest of it there. And again, this is a free tool. You can respond to posts there. It's just another way to accomplish the same thing that we do with the traditional discussion forums. The logistics on getting something like this set up is, a little bit more involved. So if this is something that you might want to explore doing in your course, then just give me a holler, and I can quickly explain it to you if I come and sit down with you. For time's sake, because I'm already getting kind of long on time here, I'll just kind of show you what it looks like and tell you that if you're interested in doing this, then I can come and visit with you in your office, and we'll get it set up for you. So that is WordPress and Screencast-O-Matic. So now let's look at Flipgrid. I'm sorry, I went to the wrong place. Let's go here. So Flipgrid, what it does is allows your students to record short little videos. I've put a password on mine. You can set it to not have a password. Okay, so when your student enters the Flipgrid, this is what they will see. So you can give them a prompt up here for the same way that you would give them a prompt for a discussion, right? So what I've used this for is for the introduction post. So instead of having a traditional discussion forum for the introductions, I've used Flipgrid to do it. So I've got a little prompt up here, record a video and be sure to talk about these things in your video. And your students don't have to have a webcam to do this. They can use their phone to do it. All smartphones have built-in cameras and microphones. So that's Flipgrid. The last thing that we'll look at then is Padlet. So Padlet is an online collaboration tool. I've used it here for a KWL. What do you know? What do you want to know? And what did you learn? So, you go and set this up and have, some sort of prompts, and then your students can go and add their responses to the prompts. There's different ways you could set this up as well, different options. You can use, this, free form, so to speak, where you can take these things and move them around wherever you want. You can choose an option where it's more rigid and you can't really change the layout. There's one that's just kind of here, I think I've got another option here I can show you. Yeah, so this is a different option. Here it's just going to be a running thread, right? So as people post, there'll be just one on top of the other, and you scroll down, kind of like a Facebook feed or a Twitter feed or any other kind of social media feed. Be sure and check out the additional resources below the video, and if you would like to look at using any of these instructional technologies further, please do reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to help you figure out how to implement them in your courses.